Have you ever wondered why some people seem to sail through life's challenges while others get stuck, repeating the same patterns over and over? Or maybe you've looked at your own life and wondered, why do I react this way? Why do certain things trigger such a strong emotional response in me? The answers might be hidden deeper than you think, rooted in the experiences that shaped you long before you even realized it. Today, we're going on a journey together. A deep dive into the powerful connection between our childhood, the concept of trauma, and something called ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. This isn't just about understanding difficult pasts. It's about unlocking a more compassionate understanding of ourselves and others, and finding pathways to healing and resilience. So let's start with the big word, trauma. What is it, really? When we hear the word trauma, our minds often jump to major, life-threatening events like a serious accident, a natural disaster, or combat. And those are absolutely forms of trauma, often referred to as big T trauma. They are shocking, overwhelming events that shatter our sense of safety. But there's another, more subtle side to trauma, often called little t trauma. These are events that might not be life-threatening, but are deeply distressing and emotionally painful, especially to a child. Think about things like the death of a beloved pet, being relentlessly bullied at school, the emotional neglect from a preoccupied parent, or the instability of moving from city to city. On their own, one of these events might seem small, but when they happen repeatedly, or when a child doesn't have the support to process them, their impact accumulates. They create cracks in a child's developing sense of self and safety. The key thing to understand about trauma, whether it's big T or little t, is that it's not the event itself that defines it. It's the individual E's experience of the event and the lasting effects it has on their nervous system, their brain, and their view of the world. Two people can go through the exact same event, and one might be traumatized while the other is not. It depends on their internal resources, their support system, and how their brain and body process the overwhelming stress. When we're faced with a threat, our bodies have an amazing built-in survival system. You've probably heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response. Your heart pounds, your breathing quickens, and stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol flood your system. This is your body preparing you to either fight off the danger, run away from it, or freeze and become invisible. It's a brilliant, short-term survival mechanism. But trauma happens when this system gets stuck. The threat is over, but the body and mind don't get the signal that it's safe to stand down. The nervous system remains on high alert, constantly scanning for danger. This is why people who have experienced trauma might feel chronically anxious, irritable, or jumpy. They might have trouble sleeping or concentrating. Their bodies are still living in the past, braced for a danger that is no longer there. Now, let's connect this to our childhoods. A child's brain is a work in progress. It's incredibly plastic, meaning it's constantly being shaped and molded by experiences. Positive, loving, and stable experiences help build a strong, resilient brain architecture. They tell a child, the world is safe, I am loved, and my needs will be met. But what happens when a child's world is not safe, loving, or stable? This brings us to the groundbreaking research on adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. In the late 1990s, a massive study was conducted by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. They surveyed over 17,000 adults about their childhoods, asking about 10 specific types of adversity before the age of 18. These 10 ACEs fall into 3 categories. First, abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual. Second, neglect, physical or emotional. And third, household dysfunction. This includes things like witnessing domestic violence, living with someone who has a mental illness or substance abuse problem, experiencing parental separation or divorce, or having a family member who's incarcerated. For each yes answer to one of these 10 experiences, you get 1 point, creating an ACE score from 0 to 10. What the researchers discovered was staggering. There was a direct dose-response relationship between a person's ACE score and their health outcomes later in life. The higher a person's ACE score, the higher their risk for a whole range of problems. We're not just talking about mental health issues like depression and anxiety, although those are strongly correlated. We're talking about physical health problems too. People with high ACE scores are at significantly higher risk for heart disease, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, and chronic lung disease. They are also more likely to engage in higher risk behaviors like smoking or substance use. Why is this? This goes back to what we talked about with trauma and the nervous system. It's growing up in a state of chronic, unpredictable stress, which is what a high ACE environment means. A child's stress response system is constantly activated. That flood of cortisol, day in and day out, is toxic to a developing brain and body. It disrupts the development of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control and executive function. It weakens the immune system, and it creates chronic inflammation throughout the body, which is a known precursor to many major diseases. Essentially, the adversity gets under the skin. It becomes biologically embedded. The childhood experiences literally shape our physiology for the rest of our lives. Think of it like building a house. If you build a house on a shaky, unstable foundation, you're going to have problems later on. Cracks will appear in the walls. The plumbing might leak. The whole structure will be vulnerable. ACEs create a shaky foundation for a person's development. This isn't about blaming parents. Often, parents are struggling with their own unresolved trauma and a lack of support, and they unintentionally pass that stress down to their children. This is about understanding a powerful cycle and recognizing the profound impact of our earliest environments. So, when we see someone struggling with addiction, we can ask, "What happened to you?" Not, "What's wrong with you?" We can see it not as a moral failing, but as a coping mechanismal way to numb the pain of an overwrought nervous system. When we see a child acting out in school, instead of just labeling them a bad kid, we can wonder if their behavior is a trauma response. I cry for help from a body that doesn't feel safe. This knowledge is incredibly empowering, It reframes the conversation from one of blame and shame to one of compassion and understanding. But here is the most important part of this entire conversation. Your ACE score is not your destiny. Your past does not have to be a life sentence. Yes, these experiences shape us, but the human brain and spirit have an incredible capacity for healing and resilience. That same brain plasticity that makes us vulnerable to early trauma also makes it possible for us to heal and rewire our neural pathways as adults. We can build a new, stronger foundation. Healing from trauma and the impact of ACEs is a journey. It often involves creating the safety and support that was missing in childhood. This can come through many forms. Therapy, especially trauma-informed therapy like EMDR or somatic experiencing, can be incredibly effective. These approaches help the brain and body process the stored trauma and complete the survival response, finally signaling to the nervous system that the danger is over. Building safe, supportive relationships is also a cornerstone of healing. Making healthy connections with friends, partners, or community members can help co-regulate our nervous system and provide a powerful antidote to the isolation of trauma. Mindfulness practices, yoga, and meditation can help us reconnect with our bodies in a safe way and learn to tolerate and manage difficult sensations and emotions. It's about learning to be a compassionate witness to our own story. It's about giving ourselves the kindness, patience, and care that we may not have received when we were young. It's about recognizing that our reactions, our triggers, and our struggles are not a sign that we are broken. They are a sign of what we have survived. Understanding trauma and ACEs is like being given a new map that can help us navigate our own inner world and the world around us with so much more clarity and empathy. It helps us make sense of our story and gives us the tools to write a new, more hopeful ending. The journey of healing is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it in a way that it no longer controls our present. It's about taking the lessons from our shaky foundation and using them to build something beautiful, strong, and uniquely ours. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content that explores the power of healing and personal growth. Your presence here matters. Take care.